Hello and welcome to the Your Financial Pharmacist Real Estate Investing Podcast, a show all about empowering pharmacists to achieve financial freedom through real estate investing. I'm Nate Hedrick, and each week, my co-host David Bright and I explore stories from pharmacists all over the country who are achieving their real estate goals while maintaining a meaningful career in pharmacy. Whether you're a first-time investor or a seasoned pro, we're here to provide education and inspiration about the world of real estate. Please note, this podcast is intended for educational purposes only and should not be considered financial or investment advice. Hey, David, how's it going?
Hey, good, thanks. How you doing, man?
Good. We're officially into 2023 now, really kind of cruising along and more guests doing more new things. And we're excited to share you guys an episode about today's guest, which started a new business and just how he's been able to accomplish quite a bit with a side hustle.
Yeah, it was a fun interview to talk with a pharmacist that had pharmacy related side hustles throughout his career and non-pharmacy related side hustles throughout his career, and how all of those dovetail into real estate too, knowing that taking that extra income, parking that into real estate investments was how he built his financial plan. And so really fun to see how real estate and non-real estate related business ventures can all come together to build a solid financial plan.
Yeah, so today we're lucky enough to be joined by Matt Kauflin, a pharmacist, an MSL, a real estate investor, a business owner, a previous preceptor of mine from way back in the day. So Matt and I have quite a bit of history. I know, David, you as well have known Matt for quite a bit of time, and just an awesome, inspirational guy that we really wanted to have a chance to talk to.
One thing too that I think is really unique about what Matt shares is that with all these side hustles and all these additional ventures and all these things, he does it in a way that isn't terribly overwhelming. Like, I think there's a lot of folks that jump out there and they try to jump into some sort of side hustle and they want to understand all of it and know every ounce and do every part of it. But Matt knows where he brings value and where it's not worth his time to try to pretend to be a professional that he's not. Like, he spends a lot of time talking about hiring an attorney to do his LLC paperwork and just bringing professionals in when it's appropriate to bring professionals in. And I think that's not only a time saver, but that's got to reduce a lot of the hurdles to getting started with all these different ventures. So lots of good practical tips, whether you're thinking about starting some sort of business or whether you're looking at getting into one of the real estate ventures that Matt has or anything in between.
Yeah. And so if you have ever experienced Matt Kauflin as a board review preceptor or as a student, or even if you haven't, again, he has a great cadence and a great way of talking about things that are really practical and just really breaks it down in a way that you can understand, which again is why I think he brings a ton of value. So hopefully you guys get to enjoy it as much as we did. And with that, we'll take you to the episode. Hey, Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we saw your recent post on LinkedIn about a new business, and obviously the three of us have known each other quite a while. So we figured, let's have Matt on the show. We haven't talked to him before. This would be great.
You know, I went back and was thinking about it, and clearly I worked with David at ONU, and then Nate did a rotation with me, and that's how we kind of met one another a long time ago. And Nate, I actually remember that your family, I think, smokes bacon.
Absolutely.
And you brought some bacon in for me. And I cooked it on a Saturday. My whole house smelled like bacon for the whole weekend. It was amazing.
That's awesome. I was just talking about that because we're getting ready to do this year's smoke. We'll probably do about 50 pounds this year. So that's really cool that you remember that.
Right on.
That's awesome. Well, good. Well, Matt, why don't we jump right in? Tell us a little bit about your pharmacy story and kind of give us the 10,000 foot view of that.
Okay, thanks. So I graduated from Ohio Northern in 1994 with my RPH. It was a 5-year degree, right? And when I was at Northern, a lot of people would copy my notes, a lot of my friends. So I literally had 2 sets of notes. So I'd be studying in the library and somebody like, hey, can I copy your notes? So really in today's age, I probably would have started a blog and charged people for it, right? But all my friends would always come and copy my notes. But one of the things I was always known for is I watched a video with Deion Sanders recently addressing his team at Jackson State. And one of the things that really stood out to me was he said, you know, when I was your guys' age, my coach would just tell me straight up, like, what was up. Now you can't do that because you offend someone or you hurt their feelings. And I was always like that in school. So all my friends would come in and be like complaining about how unfair it was. We had all these exams. It's so hard. And I would say QYC. And they're like, QYC? I'm like, yeah, quit your crying. If you did half as much studying as you did complaining about it, you'll be fine. Right? And so that was always my philosophy on, you have all this work to get done. Let's just buckle up and get it done. So when I when I got done at Northern, I did a lot of clinical rotations and I really wanted to get my PharmD. So I went right ahead and went up to Toledo and worked with a guy named Vince Morrow, who was actually a Northern grad as well. And he was a professor at Toledo. And then I came back down to Dayton, where I'm from, and I worked for 17 years at Grandview Medical Center. And it's one of the largest osteopathic teaching facilities in the country. I think there's 17 different residencies. And then they have a cardiac fellowship, HEMONC, vascular surgery, bunch of different. So it was a very academic place. And I can remember when I first came there, they really weren't pro pharmacy, right? So I would go to noon lecture, and there was this cardiologist there that was like, he just, he pimped everyone, right? And so I'm at noon lecture one day, and he looks at my badge, and he's like, "You're a pharmacist. What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm here to learn." And then as soon as he realized I was a pharmacist, he's asking me all these questions about drugs, right? And my background was cardiology, so I'm like thinking in my head, "Dude, ask me whatever you want. Like, bring it on," right? And so finally, I earned his respect. And then at the end of the day, at our internal medicine residence every year, so it's a 3-year residency, they would vote for the teacher of the year. And I won that award 6 times in the 17 years I was there. Awesome. And I was the only non-physician to win it. So at the end of the day, at the end of their residency, they would say, "Who do you learn the most from your whole time here at the hospital?" And it was a pharmacist. So, I won teaching awards at Northern as well as preceptor of the year. But I always wanted to provide value. And it didn't matter who I was doing that for. It was the patient who was number one. And if it was a respiratory therapist that I could, help out, a PA, an NP, a med student, I would get a lot of med students and actually internal medicine residents to do rotations with me in the hospital. And I'd actually send them to my friends who are retail pharmacists for a day. And they would come back and be like, "Dude, how can we help? That was horrible." Right? And this is before, electronic medical records, when you're still writing prescriptions by hand. And so I think that's, really helped out a lot. But anyway, to get to the part of my business, so I would do lectures for these med students. They'd all come in-house on Wednesday. So there'd be probably, 50 medical students. And they would always want me to do a lecture for them on hypothyroidism or, antibiotics or anticoagulation, whatever it may be. And this one student, he would stop me and he's like, "Matt, I wish you were my professor in medical school because you give us such practical knowledge, stuff that we can really use to take care of patients." And he's like, "You should charge for this." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, there's this guy out in Kansas City who's a pathologist. And literally every med student across the country buys access to this guy's website." And so I started to think about it. And one of my partners is a guy named Chris Bland. He's a professor at University of Georgia. And Chris and I have known each other a long time. And we did board reviews for the NAPLEX. So we would go all over the country at the end of the year and do like a 2-day, very condensed board review for different colleges of pharmacy. And so I got talking to him about it. And then I had another student a guy named Mike Karieski. I know you guys probably both know Mike. But he's our IT guy, and he designed our website and done a bunch of stuff with our blog and everything. So he's kind of the man behind the scenes. And then Chris and I developed all the content. So our website's called Teach Me Pharm, PHARM. Our tagline is practical drug knowledge, right? We want to teach you what you need to know to take care of patients. So all of our videos are about 20 minutes in length, and there's different disease states. So it'll be, "Hey, here's a 20-minute lecture on Parkinson's disease," and it's specifically just the drugs and what you need to know to take care of patients. So we're really going after medical students, nursing students, PA students, and then pharmacy students with our website.
So I really like what you said about that buckle up and get it done mentality. I think that there's a lot of pharmacists that get into real estate or other ventures to try to create multiple income streams, and they just buckle up and get it done. And so I'm curious, from forming a business, that obviously took a lot of work, even though this is probably a lot of content that you've shared in the board exams across the country, repackaging it, repurposing it in this business. I'm sure there's still a lot of work there. So I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of how that business was born then and what kind of work that took in order to get that done.
Yeah. So Chris and I both had a lot of content developed. And then one of the first things we wanted to do is form a partnership. So I went to an attorney friend of mine and we drafted an LLC between Mike, Chris, and myself. And so that's really what we wanted to get done first. And then as we've gotten better at the recordings, and then Mike's, really helped us in that regard. He's really done a lot with behind the scenes. And then eventually, once we start, making some money, we'll most likely develop an app of some sort to allow better access to the content as well. But it's been years of all these lectures that we've done, and then just continually updating them. So David, to your point, there was we hypothyroidism is the same, but there's newer things coming out, and so just updating those and keeping them updated is probably going to be one of our biggest challenges for sure.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. It seems like that, overnight success 20 years in the making, right? That you've been working on that for a long time, and it repackages and it comes together. You mentioned another thing in there that I want to dive into, because I think it translates really well to the real estate investor also, and that's the creation of an LLC. You mentioned going to an attorney, and I didn't hear you say jumping on a website and just pulling a form and then filling it in yourself, but going to an attorney for that. So can you talk about why you chose to form an LLC and why you felt that going to an attorney, having something kind of custom built, was worthwhile?
Yeah, well, I think number one, I wanted to do something that protected our intellectual property. And so I needed to have that conversation as well. So the attorney that did our LLC didn't really know a lot about protecting intellectual property. So he steered us to another colleague of his that helped us there. And the one thing we did is we trademarked our Teach Me Pharm name, right? Because you definitely want to do that, and then get a copyright to protect the property. And Mike is the IT guy, so he knows. So when you basically buy access to our website, you can access it on two different devices. You can access it on a phone or a laptop, or a desktop and a laptop. But once you get over those two, then there's like a trigger that we get that, and then there's clear, and when you go in and sign up for the website, there's discussions about not sharing your password and things like that. So yeah, there's a lot to that from a legal perspective. And then the other thing is, I have a friend that I work with whose husband is an attorney, and he gave us a lot of really good information as well. But I think anytime you do something like this, you got to protect yourself in this day and age, and to make sure that someone can't come in and steal the content.
And then to jump off of that, something that I think is pretty related to the real estate investing side is a lot of people look to get into it with a partner, right? It's a lot easier to go it with somebody else, and you choose the same route, right? You have a partner in the content creation, have a partner in the IT development side. Talk to me a little bit about that partnership agreement. Was that a formal process, or was it pretty much just putting some stuff on paper and saying, yeah, we all agree to this? Like, what did that look like for you guys?
Yeah, the guy that I worked with is a friend of mine, and he helped me actually with my divorce, so I knew him pretty well. And I just went to him and said, "Hey, this is what we're thinking about doing." And he's had some experience, in putting together business agreements. So he drew something up pretty quickly, sent us out to the three of us. We took a look at it, and then we each, Mike and Chris had their attorneys look at it as well, and then we literally had that done in probably about 6 months.
Nice. I just like that you're bringing in the professionals, right? I think a lot of people are quick to say, well, it's cheaper to just like bootstrap this and pull it together.
Spend the money.
Yeah.
Spend the money.
I like that. I think it's important.
And it's a tax write-off too. Why wouldn't I do it, right?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I do it right the first time?
I love that. Super important point.
My grandfather always taught me that. I learned a lot about investing from my grandfather. And he always told me, spend the money up front, buy it once, take care of it. And you don't have to, constantly keep spending money on the same thing.
No, I know one of the things we talked about right before the show was your grandfather and some of the lessons from your grandfather, particularly about real estate and kind of multiple income streams and how that all kind of comes together. So I know that in your world, the business creates an income stream for you. Your day job as a pharmacist creates an income stream for you, and you have some real estate income stream. So before we jump right to real estate, I'd love for you to talk for just a minute about kind of the value of multiple income streams and why that was a priority for you.
Yeah. So, when you look at it, the average millionaire has 6 or 7 income streams. So my wife and I both went through divorces and, got hit hard financially because we both were the primary breadwinners. And, and she was in real estate with her ex-husband as well. So we kind of diversified. And so right now I work, we both work in pharma for our day jobs. We both have kind of director level positions within pharma. She works for Johnson & Johnson. I work for Bristol Myers Squibb. I still pick up shifts as a pharmacist because that's something I never want to lose track of and not be able to do that. So I work within the Kettering Health Network on the weekends and maybe some Friday nights. But I love being a pharmacist. Like I was really meant to do this. I worked part-time when I was at the hospital in this little town that I grew up in called Vandalia, Ohio. One of my best friends, his dad was a pharmacist and had a community pharmacy. His name was Ken Farce. He recently passed away. I always thought Ken was a cool guy and his wife was smoking hot. So I'm like, hey, this pharmacy gig must be a good thing for me, right? And I really I worked there part time, and it really was what pharmacy should be. It was my former teachers, it was my friends' parents, and I took care of them. I knew 85% of the people that walked in the door, and it was just it was pharmacy utopia. And then CVS came out with Caremark, and the PBMs came in, and we had customers that were there for 40 years, customers of ours, and they came in and crying saying, if I fill my prescription here, it's twice the cost of filling it at CVS. I can't afford it. And he had to close his doors in 2018. But, I have a day job. I work part-time as a pharmacist. I have this, website, and then we have real estate. And then we're always looking for other ventures. So we just bought a cow, David. My friend raises cows, and then we slaughtered a cow, and then we have meat for a very long time. We have 2 freezers out in our garage full of meat. And I just got to talking to my buddy. I'm like, man, how much did you pay for a cow? And he's like, oh, I can get a calf for like 150, $200. I'm like, so, okay, so you charged me 2,500, and then we slaughtered the cow. I'm like, why don't we just go out and buy like 50 cows next year? Right. So I think we're going to start getting into that business as well.
I love that. I love because it's so.
I'm always looking for the next opportunity.
Yeah, it's just so in line with the way we talk about everything that we do here on the podcast, right? It's not just you can love being a pharmacist, but using these other income streams to diversify and pursue other interests that you have, it can really expand your horizons and expand what your financial diversification, right? And so I think that adds a ton of value, and it's just cool to see somebody who's been so successful in pharmacy be able to still find value in those other income streams and get not just financial return out of it, but also just enjoyment and have fun with it.
Yeah. I think one of the other things too that a lot of people don't realize is you can be really frugal and make really good money being frugal. So my father was 9 out of 10 kids. And anything he got as a kid, he basically worked for and paid for himself. Everything was like a hand-me-down or the bike was broken or whatever as number 9, right? And he really taught me the value of the dollar. So my dad was a brick mason, brick, block, stone, concrete. He worked union during the week, and on the weekends as a kid, I would work with my dad. And I liked to play sports. I was a 4-sport athlete growing up. And so anytime it was time for football season, I wanted a new pair of cleats. My dad had a deal. He's like, all right, you want this pair of cleats? You pay for half of them. You want basketball shoes for basketball? You pay for half of them. And then he also taught me how to take care of things, right? So many kids, my kids, it just drove me crazy. This is really stupid, but I had a bunch of Matchbox cars, right? And I had them all in like these holders and like had them all like lined up by color. Very organized. I would get out and play with them and I would pack them away just like very methodically. And I came home one time from the hospital and one of my kids had all my Matchbox cars in like a baggie and was smacking them around. I'm just like, what is happening? But you take care of things and they last a long time. And that's something that it's like I just taught my daughter is 15. She cleans our Airbnb for us, right? And she needed a sponge to clean the sink. And I gave her a sponge and she's like, wow, this sponge is really little. I'm like, yeah, because we buy big sponges at Costco and we cut them in half and then we save money that way by only using half of a sponge.
I love it. And I want to make sure we talk about that then. So let's shift to the real estate investment, right? It sounds like the Airbnb is there. Is it all based on that and it's a bunch of cut sponges and cleaning in the afternoons, or what does that look like for you, Matt?
So the Airbnb, we first got into long-term rentals. So we have a couple long-term rentals where we have, a couple families in there. And really we started our real estate business and my kids are like, why do you guys work so hard on this and like want to do this? And I have 6 kids between the two of us. And you know what? We're doing these long-term rentals now, and in 30 years when we're gone, they're all going to be paid off. The renters basically are going to pay them off. We make some money on the side, and then you guys have all this, real estate to help, help your families out when we're gone. So that's kind of like our investment strategy for our kids and helping them be successful when they get older. And then I met a guy at a wedding, and he got to talking about these Airbnbs, and so we kind of started looking into that. And we bought a home in downtown Dayton that was built in 1885. I don't know if you know much about Dayton, but there was a lot of inventions. A guy named Charles Kettering, the Wright brothers, right? So back in the day, Dayton was it was like Silicon Valley back in the 80s and 90s. And so we really kept the 1885 feel, and then we kind of decorated the home with all these inventions that happened in Dayton. Like it was really cool the way my wife did it. And then we looked at some of the competition, and they may not have had the best furniture, so we spent the money up front, which we know that we can write off on our taxes because it's an investment property, right? And really made nice quality purchases, and it's really worked out well for us. And you can make 2 to 3 times a month with a Airbnb in the right location than what you can with a long-term rental. So I have a daughter who's a freshman in college right now. So in the spring, I think that's going to be our next purchase, is going to be a home for her and her friends to live in. She goes to the University of Cincinnati, so we're going to get into that market as well, because typically you can charge more for rent when you're in a college town than you can just a regular rental.
Yeah, I know we've had other guests on that have been very successful with the college rentals, renting it by the room, the Airbnbs, and it sounds like you've found a balance there in terms of the kind of buying it right, doing it once, spending the money where it counts, but then also finding some ways to be thrifty along the way, like cutting the sponge in half, right? So I'm curious, how do you find that balance in your investing, and what are some of the things that you found along the way, particularly with the short-term rentals, where it's like definitely spend your money on that?
I think things that people are. We've had a lot of people come in over the summer, and they come in with like a big family, so we want to have really nice TVs. So we've spent the money on really nice, like the one main area there. There's a couple couches, really nice TV. I think the big thing is the kitchen. So we redid the kitchen. We put in all new counters and painted it, put in new lighting, and really made it a place where you feel comfortable just hanging out. And we've got a lot of good feedback from all of our people that have stayed there, how comfortable it is and how nice it is to have a place. And then we have a backyard as well, and it's totally fenced in. And then we put in a little a fire pit and a grill with really all the amenities that you would need, because people have an option. They can come in and stay at a hotel, or they can stay at your Airbnb. And when you're staying at a hotel, you can't prepare meals, you can't like hang out as a family, like you can at an Airbnb. So we really want to give all the modern amenities that we can for.
Yeah, it sounds like with that, a lot of your spend is on then driving those things that are memorable experiences, and where the people are going to spend a lot of their time. I'm curious how that also fits into your marketing efforts, as far as professional photographs, as far as your language that you put into the marketing, those kind of things.
Sure. We basically I talked to a friend of mine who's a realtor, and I said, hey, who do you use to take pictures of the homes you're selling? And he gave me a guy's name, and I called him up, and he actually lived pretty close to the Airbnb, and he came in $150. He was there a couple hours, took a lot of really great photos professionally with a professional camera. And not only did he give me the photos, but he made a YouTube video. So when I advertise, I have 80 photos, and then I have a video that he made that he put music to. It's really professionally done. And that's probably the best $150 we've ever spent.
That can make all the difference. I mean, when you compare a listing photo, right, putting my realtor hat on, with somebody's iPhone, they like quickly snapped with no lights turned on, versus a pro coming in with light box and doing it at the right time of day and using a professional camera and editing those photos. It is night and day. Absolutely. And so like you said, it's not a huge cost.
And it's not a lot of money.
No, it's and it's absolutely worth it. So I am curious though. A lot of this, it sounds like it's Matt, it's you going in and making a lot of these decisions. So do you have a property manager for any of your properties, or are you guys self-managing just about everything?
So we self-manage, but we have really two outstanding handymen. I have a friend of mine that owns his own business, and he really did a lot of the kitchen remodel stuff for us. I try and do a lot of the work myself. I'm a pretty good painter. My dad literally built the home that I grew up in. The only thing he didn't do was the plumbing because his brother was a plumber. So I can pretty much do just about anything, and I really like working with my hands. So my wife and I kind of manage a lot of that on our own. But we're out of town, and someone my handyman, I give him a keys to everything, and we're out of town, and someone locked themselves out of the Airbnb. So I called him up, and he went down and unlocked it for us. You got to have that. And then he said, "Hey Matt, instead of doing this, why don't we put a lockbox on the back of your shed?"
There you go.
Which is a great idea. So if someone locks themselves out, they can go back and put the code in and then get a set of keys out.
I like that because it's a nice mix of doing the stuff that you want to do, self-managing where you can, and relying on the team where it makes sense, right? Like you mentioned earlier with the lawyer or with the handyman, like use the right people for the right jobs. And then if you want to do the work, do it because it's fun, right? Because you enjoy that stuff. That's important.
But just think about this, Nate. I mean, when you look at managing the property on my own, so I drive down there, I write off my gas, my mileage. I'll go like maybe grab a bite to eat while I'm down there.
Sure.
I'll write that off. I cut the grass. So you look at, how much it would be for me to pay someone to cut the grass. And then that's something I'm writing off as well. So there's so many, you really have to have a really good accountant. There's so many people I talk to like, oh, I just do my own taxes. And I'm like, man, that's not smart. My taxes are, I don't know, $1,500 to $2,000 a year. But then I write that off the tax preparation on my next year's taxes.
Absolutely.
And if I would get audited, my accountant is just like, here's everything that you need, right?
Yeah, I definitely would support and second the hiring an attorney to help you with the legal and hiring an accountant to help you with the tax, that there's just professional knowledge there that's super important in making sure this is all done right. But it sounds like you're doing a lot of that. You're doing a lot of this right. I'm curious what the next 5 to 10 years of your real estate investing looks like. Because I love this why that you have of this legacy generational wealth that you're trying to create. Where's that looking for you in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, it's interesting. That's really why we started this website, because we've been trying to do this for quite some time with Teach Me Pharm. And Teach Me Pharm, the money we make there is really going to drive our real estate empire. So anytime we can, my wife and I are always, trying to save money here or there. And anytime we can save money, we want to buy another house. It was great when the interest rates were 2.5%, 3%. But now that they're at 7%, we're basically to the point where we're going to save money until we can just come in and pay cash for a home. Like we were talking about earlier with all the financing fees and the closing costs, it's getting out of hand. So when we can, buckle down and save enough money to just buy a house, we'd rather go that route than trying to finance anymore.
Yeah, when you're in the Midwest like us, that's a little more reasonable. I mean, if you were buying houses in California, you'd be waiting 10 years to buy the next one in cash. But yeah, out here, you can actually make it happen.
We just moved out of Denver. And one of the reasons we did is just because I was trying to manage everything from Denver, coming back and forth. We had a townhome that was 2,700 square feet. We sold it for $695 all cash.
Crazy.
I mean, the cost of living in some parts of this country are just, and why would you do that when we could sell that place and come not only buy the house that we're in, which is a beautiful home on 8 acres of land with an in-ground pool and a pond in the back. And then we actually, not only did we do that, but we bought another house with the proceeds from selling that place out there.
Well, Matt, I want to switch to our final infusion questions. These are 3 questions we ask everybody on the show. And I'm having like a flashback to rotations now where you would ask me a bunch of like hot seat questions, but these will not, will not be nearly as difficult, I promise.
Tables are turned.
They're not nearly as difficult. I was sweating then. You should not be sweating now. So what's one tangible strategy that you use to make sure your investing works hand in hand with your career as a pharmacist?
I the one thing that I've just always done, Nate, is I've always worked 2 jobs. I mean, you have a family and, you're working and a lot of your income gets, I had 4 kids. So a lot of my income went there. So I always looked for that extra side hustle to allow me to have money to invest.
Yeah.
I never just was satisfied with, working a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday and just getting by. Right. I wanted more. I have initiative. I have a work ethic. It's something that my parents taught me. Right. I'm never satisfied. I'm hungry to be successful.
And you're someone that doesn't sit around and wait for whatever happens to happen. You go make it happen. You've always been like that, right? Where it's not just
Absolutely.
gonna like, well,
Absolutely.
I don't know, I'll throw some money in my 401k, and when I get to 65, maybe I'll be okay. You're like, absolutely not. I'm gonna make sure I'm okay, and here's how I'm gonna do it. And I love that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it feels very Robert Kiyosaki of you to put your extra wages into assets that pay you money, right? So I'm curious with this next one. Our second question is, what's one resource that's been most helpful to you in your real estate journey, whether that's a book, podcast, person, author, website, whatever that would be?
There's three things. One was my grandfather. My grandfather had an 8th grade education. He was a Hatfield from West Virginia. I don't know if you've seen on the History Channel, Kevin Costner played Devil Anse Hatfield. That was my grandfather's great uncle.
Whoa.
And so him and his dad made their money building roads back in, the late 1800s, early 1900s. And then he was a very shrewd investor in real estate. And I tell you where he really made a lot of money is freaking trailer parks. Mm-hmm. You just go in, level some land, throw some gravel down, run some sewer and such. But man, he really did well with the trailer park. So he was one. The second one is actually my wife. My wife was in real estate with her ex-husband, and he was managing it and didn't really do a very good job, and they really lost a lot. So we learned from their mistakes, and only invest in things that are going to definitely make us income. And the third was there's actually, I was telling you guys before, there's a guy named Brian Boyd. He's a real estate attorney, and I work with his wife. And he wrote this book. It's called Replace Your Income: A Lawyer's Guide to Finding, Funding, and Managing Real Estate Investments. And I really learned, and it's a fairly thin book, but I've learned more in real estate from reading this book than any podcast or class that I've taken. And it's really good about protecting your assets as well, because like I was saying earlier, I had everything in one LLC, and he basically said every property you have, you should have your own LLC, because if something were to happen, someone falls and breaks their back on the ice in one of your homes, if everything's in the same bucket, then the attorney can come in after everything. So that really opened my eyes as far as making sure everything's protected.
That's great. That's one we haven't had on the show before, so thank you. All right, then the last one is, what's one piece of advice you'd give to a pharmacist that's contemplating a start in real estate investing?
I would say find a mentor. Find someone who's done it and who's successful at it, and ask to pick their brain. Take them out to lunch, take them out to dinner, maybe go with them to see one of their properties and see how they evaluate properties. It's always that 1% rule, right? That's what everybody wants. So basically, you buy a house for $200,000, you should be getting $2,000 a month in rent. We really try our goal is to find a C. You have A, B, C, D. A is the best, really nice neighborhood, really expensive home. What we want to do is find a C in an A neighborhood, right? So find a place that we can come in and get at a really good rate. And then we can come in and do some remodeling. We can put on a new roof. We can put on a new garage door, maybe upgrade the HVAC. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. And then it's an all a tax write-off as you're doing this upgrade. And then you can, really get a lot more rent when you can find a C value in an A neighborhood.
No, it's a super smart formula for finding the distressed asset in the good area. It fits that constant theme of like, buy it well, fix it up well the first time, do it right. And then that does help you to just be able to set it and forget it and create that generational wealth. So love the formula. I love how you've done that. If people want to learn more about you or find you or reach out, where can people find you?
Yeah, one good place is LinkedIn. And then, our website's called Teach Me Pharm. And then we're on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And then you can see me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram as well. Just Matt Kauflin. and you can DM me there. And then if you have any kids that are in college, that are in nursing school, PA school, med school, or pharmacy school, definitely check out our website. It's basically, right now it's built for students that are in one of the health professions, but eventually we're going to turn it into a continuing education for nurses, PAs, pharmacists. But we wanted to get it out there and get the student section rolling first.
Well, Matt, seriously, thank you for coming on the show, sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience and philosophies about life and how to handle it. I'm excited to see where you go with Teach Me Pharm. And again, just appreciate you coming on today.
Really good to see you guys. Great catching up.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. If you like what you heard on today's show, please leave us a review and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. If you have a question, know someone that would make a good guest, or want to connect with Nate or David, head on over to yfprealestate.com and join the growing YFP Real Estate Investing Facebook group. As we conclude this week's episode of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast, an important reminder that the content in this podcast is provided to you for your informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. Information in the podcast and corresponding materials should not be construed as a solicitation or offer to buy or sell any investment or related financial products. We urge listeners to consult with a financial advisor with respect to any investment. Furthermore, the information contained in our archived newsletters, blog posts, and podcasts is not updated and may not be accurate at the time you listen to it on this podcast. Opinions and analyses expressed herein are solely those of your financial pharmacist, unless otherwise noted, and constitute judgments as of the dates published. Such information may contain forward-looking statements which are not intended to be guarantees of future events. Actual results could differ materially from those anticipated in the forward-looking statements. For more information, please visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thank you for your support of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. Have a great rest of your week.